How's it going today, guys? Today we're going to jump into some Marvel news, Avengers Doomsday stuff, Avengers Secret Wars stuff, some Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans news, and some potential theory stuff. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So both Alex Perez and DanielRPK came out to say that Robert Downey Jr. will continue playing Doctor Doom after Secret Wars, and also no, he won't. Anyways, both of those scoopers have taken those tweets down, which is kind of interesting. The rumor came from a while back that Robert Downey was going to stick around playing Doctor Doom for 10 years. I personally really like that idea, and it makes a lot of sense to me that Robert Downey would want to come back for a while, not just for 2 movies. Doctor Doom is an insanely deep character with lots of stories, and the rumor is that he actually had a story that he wanted to pursue with Doctor Doom. He confronted Kevin Feige about it, and Kevin Feige's response was, "That sounds great, but let's get Doom right first." Which means that there's a lot more story that Robert Downey Jr. plans to tell with Doctor Doom. And if Robert Downey wants to do it, Marvel's going to make it happen as long as we keep giving them the paychecks, right? It makes a lot of sense. If we're going to have Hugh Jackman back, possibly some other character from the original movies. I don't know if that means maybe Tobey Maguire sticks around to play on the Exiles, or maybe Evan Peters sticks around to reprise his role as Wanda's brother, who they might bring back to life. There's all kinds of speculations of who this other person could be, even going as far as to say Jennifer Garner's Elektra, because she had a lot of fun reprising her role, or maybe even Wesley Snipes' Blade. Either way, splitting Secret Wars into 2 movies, or possibly calling the last Avengers movie Eternity War, given time to flesh out some Battleworld stuff in between, which is kind of what we were hearing at the beginning of all of this Secret Wars talk. This is really what the fans want. There's lots of potential Battleworld movies that could occur. They've already announced that Doctor Strange 3, Black Panther 3, Fantastic Four 2, and the X-Men movie is going to be coming right after Secret Wars. And Black Panther 3 sounds like it's pretty close to production. You can't do all 4 of them. That's way too much. But you could do 2, maybe 3 of these movies in between all of the Avengers movies. Here's my pitch. You do Avengers Doomsday. And as much as Fantastic Four 2, I think, would make more sense right after Doomsday before Secret Wars, you could squeeze in the all-new X-Men movie, push back Secret Wars, and I think that would be the cleanest story, and you introduce the all-new X-Men in Battleworld, and you call it All New X-Men because they will run into older versions of themselves. Magneto is a Holocaust survivor. This is crucial to his character. How else are you going to do Magneto is a Holocaust survivor and have him be not a super old dude after the Secret Wars? I mean, seriously, you want a 100-year-old Magneto, or do you want to have like a 40-year-old time-displaced Magneto? I think that works better, and still everyone would understand what he went through. It would be similar to Steve Rogers. But as I have said, Black Panther 3 is already set to be in production soon, and you could tell that as a Doomsday to Secret Wars connection. Doctor Doom is already rumored to be a part of that movie somehow, or just Latveria. Not a very big part, but you could still have Doctor Doom as a looming, overlord at the time, but this is a side story, and he just kind of makes a cameo real quick. They can make allusions to him, and you can focus on what Wakanda is struggling with on Battleworld. And you can give a whole backstory for this new T'Challa and make it all kind of cohesive, and it'll be very confusing for general audiences, but they will probably follow this story between the Avengers movies. Won't be so confusing in the reset. It's a lot more likely that people will drop off after Secret Wars. So all new X-Men could totally come after Secret Wars if you did Black Panther in between Doomsday and Secret Wars. But Doctor Strange 3 would make a lot more sense to come out after Avengers Secret Wars, before Secret Wars Part 2 or Eternity War. You can give him his redemption story, and well, if you read the comics, you know how that ends, which would be really perfect, I think. And you recast Doctor Strange in the reset, and you don't have to do it right away. You can wait a few years. But I believe that the Fantastic Four Part 2, or at least plugging in a story with the Fantastic Four, which you could do in the Black Panther 3 movie, giving more depth to Doctor Doom and Reed Richards and that whole dynamic, so when we have the ending to the Secret War story, you can have that dynamic, which was really big in the 2015 Secret Wars story, especially since it seems like Doctor Doom's going to swoop in and steal Reed's family just like he did in the 2015 Secret Wars. So let's talk about Steve Rogers here for a little bit. Apparently, he is in the 828 universe. This is a big rumor going around, and there's even been the scene that they pointed out in the Fantastic Four First Steps movie where Steve might be sitting on the couch with his son watching a cartoon or a trailer for a cartoon. And I went back and I watched that scene very closely, and I paused and I looked at it for a while, and I'm like, that kind of looks like the back of Steve Rogers' head. It could be. This rumor also has attached to it that Steve Rogers is in fact on the Fantastic Four ship that we saw in the Thunderbolts end credits scene. Not just Steve Rogers, but Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. So we have the Fantastic Four, Steve Rogers, and Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. But the next theory that comes in to explain how all this works does not make sense to me. You see, everyone seems to believe that Loki, for some reason, went to Steve Rogers, who was open to talking to Loki. None of this makes sense to me. Took him to the 828 universe to say, hey, you need to live your life out here because when you stayed back with Peggy, you created a branch and it needs to be destroyed, but I'm going to save your life or something. I think I got the theory right. Either way, it doesn't make sense to me that Loki would even think that Steve Rogers would trust him, let alone Steve Rogers ended up trusting him and then goes to this universe. Also, how would Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four even know that Steve Rogers was there? How would they know to take him with them? It does make sense that him being there would be the connection to why they chose to go to the 616. I mean, do you think that Loki was like, look, when things start to hit the fan, go ahead and find the Fantastic Four, they'll save you? It's just weird. It doesn't make sense to me that Loki would be the one to displace Steve Rogers. It does, however, make sense to me that Doctor Doom might want to displace Steve Rogers. There's something going on with Doctor Doom and Steve Rogers. We know this from all of the rumors. A lot of them are probably fake, but nonetheless, Steve Rogers being involved in this story doesn't even make sense, really, if Doctor Doom doesn't have an issue with something here. Because Steve Rogers was an old man. So we're taking Steve Rogers from back in time, who went back in time. I'm assuming this is the Steve Rogers that we care to even see, the one who took Mjolnir. He's supposed to have Mjolnir with him. So, Loki? What? I need more explanation on that. It's not going to cut it for me. Doctor Doom makes way more sense. You could, however, have had Doctor Strange do it. Or it was like Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange, which would mean Clea would be there too. Because Doctor Doom supposedly isn't going to show his face to anyone we know, so if Doctor Doom is on that ship with Steve Rogers, Steve doesn't know that that's a Tony Stark lookalike. You have to build a reason for why all of these things would line up, and it has to be cohesive with what we think of the characters, or at least establish a new line of thinking for us. And I don't see how you do that by saying, oh, Loki, who last Steve Rogers knows was fighting against the Avengers, showed up and said, hey, come with me, and Steve went. And supposedly he gets separated from Peggy and his son. Why would he choose to separate from Peggy and his son based off something a Loki told him? Based off something that a guy named Doctor Doom, who he's never seen his face, told him. But if Doctor Strange was there and was like, hey, 14,605,000, you know what I mean? He might listen. I'm also of the mind that if Doctor Strange was there to displace Steve, either by himself or with Doctor Doom, Steven is going to know that Doctor Doom looks like Tony Stark. So in closing, Robert Downey Jr. is going to stick around as Doctor Doom, or I sure hope so. That's my vote. All of the evidence, I think, is pointing there. Steve Rogers being in the 828 does make a lot of sense. They could play with that, and I'm okay with that storyline, but I don't believe that it's Loki. I think Doctor Doom had everything to do with Steve Rogers being displaced. Battleworld movies coming up, possibly. I would love to see at least two stories in between all of these Avengers movies. If I had to choose just two movies, I would say the best ones to do would be all new X-Men and the Fantastic Four Part 2. But knowing the production stuff going on behind the scenes, I think it's more likely that we would get Doctor Strange 3 and Black Panther 3, not in that order. And you would have to use one of or both of those stories to help flesh out some of Reed and Doctor Doom's stuff. When you really think about it, Battleworld is a huge risk, but I think they need to take that risk, and I believe they can pull it off as long as the Russo brothers can give their input on the side. And Doctor Doom is involved in those movies, especially if they do a Doctor Strange 3 in between the Avengers movies. You know Doctor Doom is going to be the main antagonist of that movie as well. So go ahead and let me know what you think about all these thoughts and theories and rumors in the comment section down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.